Hey y'all, welcome back to the Money Mindset podcast channel. I am Natalia, and this is where we talk about real estate, entrepreneurship, and finances, which is your money. Today, I am going to be talking to you about those that's graduating from high school, going off to college. Maybe you've done some college tours by now. Maybe you're still gearing up to do that. So we're going to jump right in and talk about graduation and how to maintain some type of financial independence and some budgeting while you're away at college, or if you're helping that child or niece or nephew get off to college. So we're going to talk about like preparing for those college tours and what that looks like. So the first thing is, again, how do you budget and prepare for those college tours? So when you're going on college tours, of course, you have the biggest part, which is the travel. So you're trying to figure out the accommodations, if it's somewhere close where you can just drive down for the day and then come back, or if it's something that you'll need overnight accommodations for, whether it be staying at a hotel, an Airbnb, and then making sure that you're planning for those meals during those college visits. So one tip that I would do is just kind of compare like what universities you're going to. If you can compare, like if you're going to either have to travel by car, flight, if you can catch like even a Greyhound bus or a train, or even rental cars for like even more cost-effective ways for getting down there. So it may not just be you, it might be you and your student, or it may be you and some other couple of family members. But you want to make sure that you're doing like a comparison shopping to make sure that you're getting the best flight or you're getting the best mileage on your vehicle if you're driving. And you want to make sure that the earlier that you book those college tours is going to be so much better, because if you book in advance, the more you save. So you may be able to have some type of discount, or maybe even sometimes colleges have accommodations locally where you can stay for the night. Another way is sometimes, you could carpool, meaning that if like another family or something is interested in going to that same college, or they have a child going to that college, you could kind of carpool with them and figure out like what those arrangements look like. Again, for accommodations, depending on where you're traveling to, maybe you have maybe some family or some friends in the area. If you know anyone near the college, you can ask if you can stay with them, or you can look at like some budget-friendly hotels, maybe some affordable lodging for your budget, or you can go as glamorous as you like. And then sometimes you have like those bundle deals where you have travel deals where you might can save on like your hotel, your flight, and even maybe a rental car. And again, don't forget to check that campus housing option, because sometimes they allow overnight stays for prospective guests. So then we can talk about like the meals. So depending on how you're traveling, you may be able to like pre-pack some of those meals on the road until you get down there, or figure out like some meal planning techniques. Like if I'm staying on the campus, these are some research your restaurants or any just eateries nearby that you may be able to go to that's more affordable, so you're not going down there, you're not getting caught off guard on like, okay, they want to go eat here for lunch, and then you don't really know like what that cost is. And you can always, like I said, eat off campus, like before the tour or after the tour, you can make sure that you're including that into your travel itineraries, just to make sure like even if you're eating off campus and eating breakfast, like even if at a fast food or a local Denny's or whatever, IHOP, because sometimes those eating options are only not more affordable, but they're also sometimes better than eating sometimes some college food. And so some general tips is just kind of like have that budget, setting that guideline. Like if I'm going to this specific university, I already know it's going to be like this much travel, how long it's going to take me, gassing up if that's what you're doing, or any type of plane tickets, and just making sure that you're tracking those expenses. So if your parents own like a business or anything, that can be part of a tax write-off. And then just remember to plan your visits strategically. So for example, you may be able to, if they're looking at certain universities or colleges in the same area, you can kind of combine those visits and say, like, for example, when I took my kids up to the Atlanta area. We wanted to look at like Georgia State in the morning, and then we would tour like Clark in the afternoon, and you can combine those visits and then, you know, find somewhere to eat in between that's for like lunch, and be able to combine those, you know, those costs. And so that will help actually save you costs if you can kind of combine those college tours. And then if there's anything else, just check for any type of like resources from the colleges. They may be able to like help you get any type of like discounts, maps, tours, anything that can kind of help you. And then we have the luxury of being able to search a lot of that stuff hands-on through the internet now. And then also take into consideration, like when you're going to look at these colleges and these universities, to look at like what their tuition is. And we're comparing, you know, if my child or if I'm able to get any scholarships prior to. And this is something that you can continuously do from fall all the way through. So we want to make sure that if we are looking for scholarships, we're doing that year round. When you become a freshman in college, or your child is a freshman in college and they're going through their first semester or second semester, they can still look for scholarships that can be applied to help reduce any of that financial bill that's coming for tuition, maybe room, board, meal planning. And like I said, you want to make sure that you're looking at the tuition, and you definitely after tuition want to look at like the housing and the housing options. So sometimes, well, most times universities have like that lower housing cost where you might have like a communal shared bathroom, or you might even have shared rooms, versus the higher end, which may run you, depending on the university, I don't even want to say, but because it could be super expensive if you're looking for like that private apartment or something, or their private room with that private bathroom. So the more privacy that you want is the more that you're going to probably pay in costs for that that particular housing at that college. And then after housing, you want to look at meal plans. So books, I don't really say look at that right now, because you really don't know that until you set that schedule and you know like what those college advisors are asking you to do. Some of those books may be digital, some may be like labs, and you may not have any. So just really the main cost, which is that tuition, that housing, and then what that meal plan looks like, because some colleges require that you stay on campus the first year, and then some may not if you're like in an eligible like 50-mile radius recruitment area. But you definitely want to check and ask that for the colleges, so you can be sure to make sure that if you have that freshman, or if you're that incoming freshman, you know that I have to stay on campus, and this is how much that tuition is going to cost me with the room and board and the meal plan for the first semester, second semester, if they're on a semester system. So again, that first apartment or that dorm building, you also want to look at like how much that security deposit is. And remember that with colleges, even like now, this is getting really super late as far as April, if you have not at least put down that housing deposit to secure that you're coming on campus to live. So they're starting to fill that up now and doing those room selections. So if you haven't made a decision, this is a good time to make a decision, so that you're not forced to stay somewhere that you don't want to stay. But with those dorms and those apartments, those come security deposits, and then of course utilities. You want to know how that work, if it's included with the, I don't know, heating, gas, electric, water. You want to make sure trash, you want to make sure that stuff is included, and if it's not, what those are expenses are. And then also for the most part, you may get some dorms or apartments that come with some furniture, and then you have those that, you know, more expensive. You may not have any furniture, but for the most part, you're going to get like that twin bed, a desk, a dresser, and like your own, hopefully your own closet space. And so you'll be able to just shop and budget for those supplies that you can bring on campus with you. And so you want to make sure that you are also saving for those moving expenses, right? Because depending on if you're going down the street and we can rent a local truck, versus if we're moving out of state and most of the shopping is going to be conducted out of state, so we're not shipping, just remember that you're still calculating that stuff into the budget, because they need what they need, you need what you need when you get on campus, right? And we want to make sure that we're being affordable, reasonable, because if this person is out of state, they may have to plan to live out of state for the 4 years or however long it takes them to complete that degree. And then, so next I'm going to go into like managing those student loans. So sometimes even like when I took my granddaughter to visit Georgia Southern this past week, just understanding like some colleges are super behind on like financial aid and giving like their award packages. That is probably a little bit normal now, especially for an incoming freshman. With my son, he wasn't even awarded like his aid package until like the second week. And luckily enough, they weren't like able, they did not drop him from his classes or anything like that, because a lot of schools will wait for that aid package to come in before paying for tuition and paying for like books and other expenses, even housing. So they'll make sure that that's covered before issuing any type of like refund check. But if you are getting any type of federal loans through the U.S. Department of Education, just remember you got those that are like direct subsidized. So this is for undergraduate students with financial need. And so the government pays that interest for you or for your child while they're in school. And then you have that direct unsubsidized loan. And this is for undergraduate, graduate, professional students. And this interest accrues for the time of the loan, from the time it's dispersed and it's sent to the school or to you for issuance. They start accruing interest on that from the whole entire time that you're in school with those. And then, of course, you have the Parent Plus loan, and those is for graduate students, parents, or dependents of undergraduates. So these are like higher interest rate loans, but can cover the full cost of attendance. And just remember, with the different types of subsidized, unsubsidized plus loans, the interest rates, they can be fixed, and they can also provide you with different repayment options. So for example, with the U.S. Department of Education, they have like the income driven repayment plans, loan forgiveness programs, if that's still in effect. You may have like deferment or forbearance options, meaning that you may need to like postpone a payment for a month or two until you can figure out like your really your budget, and if you'll be able to like set those payments upon like graduation to be able to fit into your new budget based on like your new projected employer, right? And so or it may not even be based on that, because they want you to repay immediately anyway. So for like a credit check, they're not really required for most federal loans, but remember, like with the federal U.S. Department of Education loans, you have more flexibility in your repayment options. And some of that interest, remember, is subsidized for some of the loans, which means some, depending on if you get that subsidized loan, you're not going to pay that interest until you actually graduate and you're out of school. And then, of course, don't forget, if there are any, like right now, we had like the public forgiveness. If you worked in some type of public profession where you could get your loans forgiven, that may or may not always be the case. Maybe you can find an employer after college who is able to help you with some of those loan payments, either while you're in school or after school. So depending on if you are one of those students or if your child is one of those students that's going to work, some of their college to help, minimize that debt. Just look into employers that may assist with tuition assistance. And then, of course, we have like the private loans. So this is like with your banks, your credit unions, your state agencies, or your online lenders. And remember, these types of loans vary by lender. Okay, so that means that the interest rate varies as well. So they can be either fixed or variable, depending on who you're taking or borrowing that money from. So they do, these are like less flexible than federal student loans, and they can look at your credit. More than likely will look at your credit. And so like when you get done, they won't offer that, they may not offer like that income driven repayment plan, meaning that I'm basing those repayment payments based on how much money you're making. They may just have a flat out fee of like, this is what you owe and this is what you need to pay. And of course, like I said, because it's like private institutions, they're going to do that credit check. And it depends on like your credit score and your financial history. But the benefits of private money is that it can cover beyond like your federal loan limit. So you are set to a specific loan limit amount for each year. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. With private, you don't have that stipulation. And so for that reason, they could offer lower rates depending on if if the borrower, meaning the parent or whoever's borrowing that money, if their credit is excellent and if they're repaying their bills on time and their credit score is high. So remember, the borrowing limit is not tied to financial need with private loans. So some of the key differences, again, for the federal loans, these are like government loans. You have more of like a fixed low rate. You got different repayment flexibilities. No credit check required except for like with the PLUS loan. And then the eligibility is based on some need. And then remember that the loan limits are capped annually, okay? And then with that private loans, they're fixed or variable, normally higher rates depending on that person, the borrower's credit worthiness and how they've paid their bills in the past. So you may have less flexibility, but you can borrow up to like the full cost of attendance and stuff. So some tips for minimizing that student debt loan, like while in school, again, is the first thing is to keep researching those scholarships. Just because you've been accepted or you're on your way in does not mean that you cannot be applying for scholarships, okay? My daughter is an incoming freshman in high school, and so we're going to start opening up that profile on College Board so that she can start getting acquainted with how to do scholarships, start researching universities, even though she's pretty gung-ho where she wants to go. But we're going to still do that because she's only, like I said, incoming freshman in high school, and you want to make sure that you're exploring those options. And so like as a parent, one of the main things I do is when I have taken my older sons or my grandchildren or any type of nieces or nephews on college tours, I bring them along with you because you never know the type of exposure that is given in them. And it's like, yes, when we went to Georgia, she's like, no, this one's not for me. And they know, right? Do I want to stay in the city? Do I want to stay in the country? Do I want to go to a large university? Do I want to go to a small university? So it all matters. So I say, if you do have those kids that's up and coming that may be like entering high school, maybe sophomore, junior, senior, go ahead and bring them along with you, as long as you're not like breaking the budget to do so. And so some tips on that, like I said, that student loan debt is to create that repayment plan like post-graduation, and just understand, like as a freshman, if you don't have a parent or anything helping you out, what will that look like? Because I know when I was a freshman, I was not thinking about me repaying any of the loans. I was like, oh, that's so long, so far away. So you don't really mentally digest like, hey, I got to pay this stuff back. And then you just assume, oh, I'm just going to get that high paying job and this is what it's going to look like. And it may not look like that. So we want to plan accordingly, especially as an incoming freshman to college. Just realize what you take, just only take out what you need, not what you want, right? We're not taking out student loans, federal or private, to be able to go shopping, to be able to do, because these are real bills that we are going to have to pay back. And it does, how you pay stuff affects your credit. And we want to make sure that we're paying attention to that, because guess what? We just got a credit score. Like if you're 17 and a freshman, maybe not, but as you're turning 18, hey, this is the beginning of you setting the precedence of, this is my credit score. This is how I repay my bills. I'm making sure that I'm being responsible in that. So like I said, have that post-graduation plan, and just understand the importance of making payments on time. And if you can't make your payments, go ahead and put in for that forbearance or that deferment, so you're not looking like, oh, she just skipped the payment or he just skipped the payment and they're not paying attention and don't care, with no intentions of repaying them, right? And remember, like with the first jobs, like some people will not work at all, right? for the whole duration of freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. And then if you do, you want to make sure that, you know, if you are working, that you're prioritizing, again, those needs over those wants, that you're paying for those rent, the utilities, that food and that transportation, if it's anything that's not covered in your tuition, your housing, or your meal plan. And you want to, most importantly, make sure that you're setting something aside still for emergencies, because if you are driving on campus and you brought a car, what if you have a flat? You may need gas. So you want to make sure, like, if stuff is low, that you just have that emergency fund. What does that look like? I'm saying minimum 500 to 1,000, okay? Emergency fund. And then, of course, remember that you can use some type of tools, apps for budgeting expenses and expense tracking. And again, I'm going to harp on this. Just remember that you're building that credit. So the decisions that you're making during college, during your university life, will affect you in your older adult life once you've graduated and you're looking for that career job, right? Or whether you're, even if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, everything affects it. If you're trying to, get a loan to start your own business, credit is going to be an impact on that. And you want to make sure that you're avoiding that credit card debt unless it's something that you need and that you're paying it back on time. And just making sure that you're monitoring. And just remember that college students are susceptible really to scams and frauds because you guys are new as far as like the credit world, fresh credit, it could be highly impacted. So we want to make sure that we're securing those documents. Meaning that social security card, that birth certificate. We want to make sure that we're putting that stuff up, lock and key, so that it's not something that somebody can steal your identity. Like for my son, he was at a local college, so we just didn't let him take that there. But if he needed it to take it to any place of business, he could just come to the house and get his social security card and his birth certificate. And just remember to not keep those things together. And definitely do not just walk around with like your social security card in your wallet with your ID. So I just tell him those are just things that are just like not good things to do, right? Because you never know, if you lose your wallet, guess what? I got your ID and your social security. So now I could probably apply for that birth certificate and, and just figure out like how to steal your identity. And just remember that scamming and fraud and everything like that is real. And again, start that emergency fund. Hopefully, like I say, $500 minimum. If you get it higher than 1,000, great. But we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. And then just remember to, have them start budgeting for job interviews if they are going to work on campus or off campus, because you might have like some uniform expenses. You might have to dress up depending on if you're working on like a financial aid office or admissions offices. You might have to have certain work attire. And you want to make sure that you are presenting yourself the way that you need to, best foot forward in everything that you do, even if you're just working something that doesn't require like a suit and tie, right? And so we want to make sure that we understand also that, a lot of college campuses have like those on-site health clinics, and we want to make sure that if you don't have that, like an actual plan that you consider, what I'm saying, if something happens and you're sick on campus and you might have a medical bill, or you might have a toothache and have to go to the dentist, and just understanding like, are you covered? And you can ask your parent, am I still covered? Because a lot of students are still covered until the age of 24. But if you are not, then you need to want to make sure you understand that, because in 4 years of college, and especially if you're away, you're probably going to get a code, something that you need to be able to go to a store or to a clinic to see a doctor or a nurse about. And then just remember, there are other ways that you can create income, even if you're a college student, just having some type of side hustle, part-time job, whatever it might be, and just understanding like that's a way to put cash in your pocket, and so that I'm not solely dependent upon, I'm going to use this private money or this federal money to live, for those 4 or 5 years or however long it takes you to graduate or go on to your postgraduate or your graduate degree program. And just remember that as you go off to college, we are still forward thinking. I'm always forward thinking. So after college, what does this look like, right? So we want to make sure that we're looking at those long-term financial goals, because one day I'm going to want to buy a car, right? I'm going to want to buy a house. I may want to be able to further my education. So what you do now, degree, the type of degree that you're getting, how much you're spending on your education, it all matters and it all ties into the after. Okay. So depending on, and I'm not going to say any degrees that I may think is not, but you want to make sure that you're looking into what that degree pays out if you're working at such and such employers. And you can do, they have a study, I think it's on U.S. Department of Labor. You can go on and just kind of do a career study search, right? So if I say I want to be, a mechanical engineer, where can I take this degree? How much is that entry point into that field? I want you to know that before saying, oh, I'm just going to do some, whatever I want to do and some fun stuff, not really understanding that what I'm choosing to do. And I'm not saying don't do what you love, but understand that you want to make sure you know what that equates to. What is that hourly figure? What does that salary figure look like if I go work here, if I go work in a different state? And is this something that I can live off of? So if I go to that area and I have this degree and I go work for this employer, what does rents look like in the area, right? What does mortgages look like in the area? What does those utilities and those day-to-day food costs, what does it look like? And will I be able to sustain based on what I've chosen to do? And like I said, I'm always long-term looking at financial goals. So we want to still make sure that wherever I go, I'm still able to put up and invest, right? Once I get into my career, I'm going to go ahead with that employer or outside that employer. And I'm going to make sure I have that IRA set up for retirement, whether it be in a Roth, a traditional, or some type of matching program. You want to make sure that you're doing that from career job one, right? Or even if you wanted to start in college, you could, but I'm just saying when you get that first career and that first job with that employer, make sure that you take advantage of that. And lastly, just remember that, this is a fun experience. It's a challenging experience. It's going to be different from a parent perspective, from a kid perspective, but we want to make sure that we're looking at all sides, right? We want to make sure that we're preparing and so that we're not getting caught off guard. And that's the main thing, because we want to make sure that you have a plan. And just like I always talk about with a budget is simply just a plan for your money. It's not overcomplicated. It's like, okay, I got $100 coming in. This is what I'm going to do with it. We just want to make sure that we're having a plan, right, around the different areas in transitions in our life, because as we transition and go through different things in our life, our budget is always impacted and it is always changing. And this is why you cannot just do one and then think that it applies forevermore. So lastly, again, thanks for watching for the Money Mindset podcast channel. Stay, click on the screen for our next podcast coming up, and I'll see you again. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who may need it.